Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I can't possibly find words to tell you how grateful I am for this wonderful support for my family and for my dad. My mother, who is too frail to be here, is watching, and she would be very glad not to have to be here because there's so many dignitaries, as my mother would find it. She even said to me 2 times in the last 2 days, "Now, while I'm home and you're at Mass, the Archbishop is going to come and visit me, is he?" And we had to assure Mom, nobody is going to come and visit you other than your family when we come back. But I have to tell you that to have my brother priests here and my families from my parishes, and especially St. John's, my sister and I, and my dad and my mom, we are incredibly, incredibly supported and happy. Thank you so much. By the way, my mom and dad were married on the 4th of July. It was the only time he could get off. He had such a strong work ethic, and he had to help his father in the plumbing business. And he said, "Well, how come you're getting married on the 4th of July?" He says, "Well, the only time we get off." He says, "But look at it this way." And he told my mom, he says, "Hon, no matter how old we get, we'll always have fireworks on our anniversary." And they were married at St. Elizabeth's Church in Hollandtown. When they used to ask my father, what sign was my mother, born under, he would say SK. And as they came out of the church, because it was a very, very hot July, an ice cream truck coming up Baltimore Street saw the crowd and pulled over and started selling ice cream. It was intended by God, I'm sure. This is really a Mass of thanksgiving for the long, faithful, generous, and loving life of my father. He taught us so much. He gave so much to our family, friends, neighbors, everyone. Some of the things I learned from my father: if you are hired to work, always keep busy. If everything else is done, pick up a broom and sweep. There is always dirt. Dad had a fierce work ethic. He would say, always be willing to try. In this, Dad was upbeat about what could be accomplished if you tried. He often said when approaching a new task, nothing beats a try but a failure. In this, he was a hopeful person. In other words, it's always worth to try until something stops you. You did your best and you tried, and there's no shame in that. Václav Havel said, hope is not optimism. Hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense doing regardless of how it turns out. That's how my dad saw things. My father was disgusted by how mean people could be to each other. He would often comment, "Never kick a man when he's down." Or, "That was a common thing to do." Perhaps he got that from the legendary pitcher Satchel Paige, who said, "There ain't no man can avoid being average, but there ain't no man got to be common." Dad would stress that we must take responsibility for our actions and accept the consequences. However, there was a time when a teen, while speeding down the street, hit Dad's parked car. We were all at home, we heard the crash. "What happened?" Dad asked. Well, in tears, the boy said he had had an argument with his girlfriend who lived up the street, and leaving hit the gas pedal, misjudging the curving road in the dark. He was in such distress. Dad saw this, got a soda for him, brought him into the house, and listened. When the police came, my dad said nothing about the speeding, but pointed to the officer that the street light was out, that it was a narrow street with cars on each side, and that he'd been complaining to the county to fix that light, and they never did. The cop wrote no ticket. Puzzled, I wondered why Dad did this. Because he talks so much about consequences for our actions. He said because the boy had said that he was scared to go home, his father would kill him. Dad thought it was such a sad thing that a boy would be afraid of his father. At that time, I looked at my dad and wondered, where did this man come from? But then I got it. Dad took the care of a father to his son seriously. Dad was consistent in keeping the Lord's Day. One surprising 1950 Sunday blizzard when we walked to church, 7 blocks, uphill all the way, in the snow, I followed in Dad's footprints like the poor man following Wenceslas. When we got to church, Dad was distressed to learn that the Mass had been canceled, since the bishop removed the obligation to attend under penalty of sin because of the blizzard. My father was irritated. How can you be excused from what you're obliged to give God? Besides, the priests only lived next door to the church. Couldn't they have made it to the church? Dad used to say when people in a crisis would declare, well, it's in God's hands now, he would ask, whose hands was it in before? Did we just now decide to give it to God? My father brought a lot of joy to people. His fierce loyalty and making himself available at any place, at any time, if you needed something or someone to help. Rucky Davids, with Robin, wrote me from Ocean City. He says, your father was a wonderful man. I remember the room lighting up when he arrived. He was always so kind and caring. That's how much Dad enjoyed being with his family. Not long ago, Dad reflected about the Magic House on Manor View in Glenarm, where his sister Fran hosted the entire family on so many special times throughout each year. My father was a person who took great joy in life and looked into the heart of things which brought him joy. Where his heart was, his treasure was. Now, joy is quite a distinct gift to have. While virtues like courage, honesty, and kindness are character traits, all that my father had, they're valued for their moral goodness. But joy is a specific feeling that arises from a deep sense of life's abiding goodness. While happiness and pleasure are often seen as temporary states of feeling, joy is described as more enduring. It's a virtuous state that takes you over, and it develops through the experiences and behaviors in your life that you align with your sense of what is ultimately good. What is the ultimately good thing in life? That too was Dad's compass. He was happy for that. And despite some real downturns in his life, he never allowed that to take his life over. He made himself consider to reside in joy. It was a good decision. Upon grasping the approaching end of his life, Dad reflected on what he'd been taught as a child. This is while he was at home in hospice. He said, to know him, to love him, to serve him, that's what it's all about. It was Augustinian theology disguised in the question and answer lessons of the Baltimore Catechism. And Dad's remembering that, I knew it was a quiet assertion that he had lived by that, and that he had chosen to live a meaningful life without ever really blowing a trumpet about it or demonstrating, his religious faith. Dad practiced what he believed, and that was enough. Dad believed in prayer. He knew he needed God. When his mother was dying at the Magic House on Manor View, his mother, who was super Meemaw, was in the ragged distress of final breathing, to one ragged breath after the other. As we were keeping vigil, my father took me outside the house for a moment and said, look, he says, I can't stand this. Grandma, my mom, was a good woman. She did not deserve this. "You tell God to let her go. You've got more pull than I do." I said, "Dad, I don't have more pull than you do. Tell him to let her go." My dad could be quite demonstrative about things. Anyway, very shortly after that, she died, peacefully. My dad gave me the credit. And he talked to other people about it for years. But I really think it was his prayer that was heard. I'm certain of it. While Dad did receive the sacrament of the sick at the house, Ferdinand and I were there, and it meant so much. But also, after outliving all of his peers and companions, Dad needed to be in daily touch with people who could reach out and affirm him personally. One time, somebody was working on a house up the street and was selling windows, came up to approach my father's house and said, "Hello, sir, how are you doing? Are you here?" And then he goes, "Hi, fine." He goes, "Have you been here long?" He says, "I'm the oldest SOB here." He says, "Everyone else has died." It was not a great moment for Dad, but it was how he felt coming out. And that is why we are so grateful for this beautiful parish community and other church communities I've been in, because when I said, "Could you send my dad some notes or cards?" And obviously they weren't going to send him something saying, "Get well soon." They wrote about things that were dear to them, experiences that they had when their loved ones died. And many times they said, "You have such a marvelous son. You must have given him a great example." I can't claim that that's where it all came from, but I will take credit for some of that coming from him. And he then would read these and find strength and solace and smile. And we would paste them onto the wall around the bed in his hospice room at our house. And then he would look at those. The first card that came is reproduced in the program on the inside. It says, "Courage is being able to let go. Faith is knowing that God will catch you." Courage is being able to let go. Faith is knowing that God will catch you. Dad read each card and would tape them on the wall where you could see them. He planned to write each one back. Not only is courage being able to let go and faith knowing that God will catch you, but faith is also being able to say, "You can go. We let you go. It's okay to go." And after my mother prayed one Hail Mary after a very particularly trying evening, Dad passed gently with my sister there, and me not far behind. You can't ask for much more than all this. You can't see it, but Dad is laid to rest in a collared shirt with a blue striped tie with Super Dad on it, ribbon after ribbon after ribbon, and with a Joe Cool Snoopy monogram on his pocket. Dad didn't make it to this Father's Day, but on the back of his Mass program is a snapshot of a card we'd given him one year, which he kept. It's still true and always will be. It's who Dad was, what he taught us. If you turn your program, you can look at it. It says, "You give your word and stand by it. You give your help and don't expect credit. You give your heart and make things better for so many people. We are profoundly grateful. Thank you, Dad. We love you."